we get to bring in the great voice of the Gamecocks, Brad Muller. Hey, man.
How you doing?
I just, every time I think of them in the peach state, it drives me up the wall. We're more than double the amount of peaches they produce. What are we doing here?
I lived in Georgia for 13 years, so yeah. Next time I talk to some of my Georgia buddies, I'm gonna have to make sure to remind them of that.
Yep, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate that. They can be. I don't know what should Georgia even be known for. What I don't even know.
Well, where I lived, it was actually the home of the. It was a small town called Milledgeville that used to be the capital of Georgia. It was best known for the mental institution that used to be there, the state hospital. So, I don't know.
That's scary. You don't want to be known for that, I don't think.
Right.
Oh, man. All right, man. It is so good to see you again. You and Derek are pretty busy this time of the year.
That's a good time.
It is, isn't it? And especially when you're calling winners.
Yes.
And you get a chance to do that. And now that softball's doing what they're doing, a reminder, Ashley will be here tomorrow, and we can't wait to see her again. She is as sweet as they come, but she can be a rattlesnake out there on the softball field. She's a hell of a coach. So is Dawn Staley, and Charlie Krim has got the Gamecocks as the top overall seed. Another magical weekend for them in the SEC women's tournament. And do you think that when they went into this thing, I'm just understanding Dawn and her team and the competitive spirit that they have, like, did they have Texas circled? Like, please give us Texas again in the finals. Did you hear any of that stuff?
Well, I think everybody wanted them again. Obviously, they split during the regular season, but because of the success that South Carolina's had the last 10 years, that anytime they do lose, there's kind of the fan base certainly gets a chip on their shoulder. And because they split with Texas, losing the second meeting there in Austin, I think there was a lot of folks that said, yeah, we want another shot at them to show that we're the better team. Nobody likes to share a regular season, conference championship. I know Coach Staley doesn't like to share a title. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what it was this year, since, the head-to-head was even, everything else was equal. So, I think that there's a lot of people within the program that were hoping they would get that opportunity. Texas is really good, and they are a difficult matchup specifically for South Carolina based on what they have with their size and depth in the post and what South Carolina does not have this year. South Carolina, for the first time in 10 years, doesn't have an All-American in the post, but they're still pretty good. And we saw that, on Sunday in the championship game, and they did a terrific job. I think the coaching staff came up with an outstanding plan defensively, and the players executed it really well. I think South Carolina's forwards, specifically Sanaya Fagan, Miriam Dowda coming off the bench, and then, Chloe Kitts playing the four, were outstanding all tournament long, especially on Sunday.
Yeah, we're going to get to Chloe here in just a second. She's turning up the heat here at the right time of the year. You mentioned not having an All-American in the paint, but they are still pretty good. And obviously the loss of Ashlyn Watkins certainly, is a major reason for that. Ashlyn Watkins, I think, is probably going to end up being an All-American in the paint, for anybody wondering, right?
Yeah, she's a unicorn.
Man. But when, so they've lost 3 games this year, which is a lot by South Carolina standards, which is just bizarre to even think that. But, the challenges in the games that they've had to, not that they don't have to battle every game, but in the ones where you're like, this is going to be a fight to come out on top here. Talk about the paint. And from your perspective, you've seen them all. You've been up close for every single one of these things. The rest of us have seen it from a little bit of a distance. Talk about that and how it will translate to deeper in the tournament.
Yeah, you always want to be playing your best basketball late in the season. And, if the SEC tournament is an indication, then the Gamecocks are certainly trending in that direction, specifically with their inside game, as I mentioned with Sanaya Fagan and some of the others. And again, it's not always fair to compare because, the Gamecocks have been blessed. You think about the last 10 years, you had Elena Coates, and then you had Asia Wilson come in the next year, and then their careers overlapped for a few years. Then you had Asia by herself, and then you had Aaliyah Boston, and then you had Camila Cardoso come in, and their careers overlapped for a couple of years. And then you had Camila by herself. So, those are pretty high standards in terms of what you were getting in the paint for 10 years. But, Sanaya Fagan offensively is as good as many of them with her ability to finish under the basket. Her mid-range is fantastic. I think we saw that in the SEC tournament. I think the biggest knock on her, or question mark maybe going into this year, was, can she play defense for long stretches? Is not so much the ability, but the want to. And, this year, I think at times, she played a little bit tight, and finally she's kind of loosened up as the season got late and is playing her best basketball at the right time. I think she had 22 points in the game at Ole Miss, the second to last game. The defense all three games was really, in the SEC tournament, just absolutely amazing with what she did. She shut down the All-American Reagan Beers, the All-American center for Oklahoma, in the semifinal game, held her, I think, to single digits. And that's a big body in the paint in Reagan Beers. And they shut her down, made her very inefficient. I think she was like 2 for 10 from the floor. And then, you shut down the two bigs for Texas. They had a 6'4" starting post that's really good. And then the 6'6" girl coming off the bench, Kyla Oldacre. And that was a non-factor on Sunday. And you got to credit Sanaya Fagan for stepping up her level of game on the defensive side. And I think it carried over into her offense. I mean, Fagan in the 3 games of the SEC tournament played like an All-American. In the 3 games, she averaged about 13 points per game, but she shot 75% from the floor, 18 out of 24 in the 3 games. And a lot of them, like you saw in the Texas game, was mid-range. She wasn't just shooting layups. She was shooting, 10-footers and making them with regularity. And so that's what you love seeing going into the postseason. Then you add Chloe Kitts coming in at the 4 position, who probably the last week of the regular season had the best week of her career, had a triple-double at Ole Miss and then a double-double to close out against a good 15th-ranked Kentucky team. And then she's the MVP of the SEC tournament. Tells you, where her game is right now. Same kind of thing, playing good defense, a lot of hustle, and shooting it well. For the SEC tournament, she was 23 out of 31, roughly 74%. And again, not just layups, knocking down mid-range. And that really, when you get your post players playing like that, it helps stretch out the defense where, when you had a Camila Cardoso, they'd pack in a zone and just play everyone there and prevent her from getting layups. But when you can hit mid-ranges and all that, it forces the defense to stretch out a little bit. It also opens things up for your guards, and having the 2 of them hit their stride at the right time is a big shot in the arm for this team.
Yeah, I think going back to the Arkansas game, Chloe's got at least 3 double-doubles, or maybe 4.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because I know she had the triple-double and the double-double to end the regular season, and then just continued to play well. Didn't have a double-double in the actually had a double-double in the first game, the Vanderbilt game. I think had 25 points, 10 rebounds in that game. And just missed a double-double in the championship game against Texas. I think she had 9 rebounds and 15 points. So yeah, she's just getting after it, and that's what you love to see. A lot of times you hear it's a little easier to rebound when you're 6'7", but when you're undersized, which Kitts and Fagan are relatively undersized compared to some of their contemporaries. It's more about want to when it's going after rebounds, and you saw a whole lot of want to in the SEC tournament with them cleaning the glass.
Yeah, did Dawn and the staff, is this like, hey, look, Chloe, you're talented, and this, if we're going to go win this thing again this year, this is the role that you got to play. I mean, were there any conversations, or did it just one day the light just come on? I mean, not that the light hasn't been on. I'm not trying to be offensive to Chloe Kitts. I'm just saying this has been a different level.
I think it's a little bit of both, where it's the understanding that and conversations about you as coach, like to say, playing to your standard. Look, you're good, but you're better than this. Like, if when you look at certain games, like, you're better than this. You can do more for us. And once you realize that and believe that and make that your passion, like, you know what, I am good. I've been here 3 or 4 years, that it's time for me to start doing this thing. And then once you do it once and you see, like, wait a minute, yeah, I can do this. And she did, I think it kind of feeds itself. Once you have 1 or 2 games like that in a row, then that becomes your standard. It's not just, it'd be kind of cool if I could do this. No, wait a minute, this is my standard now, that I can do this against some of the best teams in the country. So there's no reason not to expect that. Make the defenses have to play you harder, and just get after it a little bit more. So I think it was a little bit of both, of conversations with coaches and also, players coming to the realization that, wait a minute, I'm here for a reason. I can do this. It's my turn to take on that leadership role, and step up the game. And Chloe certainly has done that down the stretch here.
Is there a power couple in sports bigger than CMB and Chloe Kitts right now, at least in college athletics, because I'm not aware of one.
Yeah, it's a pretty good group. If they ever had a family together, it'd be it'd be some scholarships waiting, right? Because
Yeah.
it's two tremendously talented young people that are outstanding at basketball, and it's nice that we have both of them here because they both mean a lot to their respective teams.
I would say so. If you're Dawn, or maybe this needs to come from the top. I guess it would come from Jeremiah and Donati now, but you need to get these guys to first, like the reverse of kind of like a prenup, but the reverse of a prenup, but for their children. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if you get married and if you choose to have kids, you are signing their college basketball rights to the University of South Carolina in lieu of NIL or whatever it is that we need to give you over the next year or two. Maybe I don't know if things are going to trend that far, but they'd be smart to do it because I got a feeling they'd be quite talented. And I think too with the Kitts thing, Brad, is it's not like when they were playing against every team that they've played against that she hasn't been scouted in every game or whatever it is. But this does add a different element to this team going into the tournament. And maybe just a week ago, you might have thought, okay, this is who South Carolina is, especially if you're UCLA or Southern Cal or Texas or one of those teams out there that's going to try to knock them off their perch. You're going, these are the threats. Yes, this is a good player. Yes, that's a good player, but this is who they are. That's not the case anymore. If she's doing what she's doing underneath the basket, both offensively and defensively, able to stretch it a little bit, that adds a whole nother level to this thing for teams to guard against. And once again, Texas just learned this. It makes them as hard as they are to beat. It makes it even harder to beat. When you thought you were getting a break, now all of a sudden you're not getting one anymore.
Well, yeah, and then you got to spend more time on preparation, you got to spend more time watching film on Chloe and all these other people, and spending more time in practice of showing you the different things she can do. So that's helpful, obviously, when your team has to do more to prepare. And then the depth of that South Carolina has had, some of the emerging depth, really. Joyce Edwards, the freshman post player, has come a long way since November with what she has done, made first team all SEC this year, coming off the bench as South Carolina's leading scorer. When you can have, Sanaya and Chloe playing the way they're playing, and then you have, someone like Joyce Edwards coming off the bench and giving you what she's given you. And then more recently, even though it's stuff that doesn't necessarily show up as stats, Miriam Dowda, the last couple of weeks, the Arkansas transfer, really gave the Gamecocks some outstanding minutes, especially on the defensive side of things and rebounding. Kind of been waiting for her to kind of emerge as do what she had done at Arkansas, and that is be a good rebounder and play good defense. And she was very helpful because you get worn out guarding all them bigs. But then when you can wear them out by bringing someone, off the bench who's, fully capable of shutting you down as well for the next 2 or 3 minutes until you get your starter back in, that just makes you better, because not a lot of teams don't have the depth that South Carolina has. And when you can have that in the post, it's huge, because that was one of the things you saw early in the year with UCLA when we went out to LA and UCLA beat South Carolina handily. UCLA probably has the best size and depth in the post in the country that I've seen in person this year. They start 6'7" and 6'4", at the 4 and the 5, and then they got 2 6'4" girls that come off the bench, 6'4" or 6'5", that come off the bench that are really almost as good. So those kinds of games are tough matchups, but when you can have the depth that South Carolina is starting to develop here late in the season, it creates more opportunities for you to make a deeper run if you run into those kind of matchups.
One of the underlying positives, if there could possibly even be one for the future of the program, with the just terrible injury to Ashlyn, is Joyce Edwards. Like you mentioned, she has just, everything you heard about her coming into school, and then she kind of had to grow up a little bit.
Yep.
And then she did. And you think about next season and maybe beyond that with Joyce Edwards and Ashlyn Watkins.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. How do you guard that?
That's what's going to be fun. And seeing, Joyce, first of all, is very, very smart. And that's one of the first things that struck me about her. She's very intelligent. So she absorbs things quickly. And you could tell, just when she gets off the bus, you see the athleticism. You're like, oh yeah, that kid's a player. And then, early in November, you could see there was a little bit of struggle of adjusting to the speed and, waiting for, the cliche, waiting for the game to slow down a little bit for her. And then when it started to get rolling for her, when you saw things slow down for her, you're like, okay, she's just going to get better. And she's already playing at a very high level for a freshman, which is great. And you combine that with, Ashlyn Watkins, who obviously they lost in January with the ACL injury, who, again, is such a matchup nightmare because she's got good size and leaping ability. My favorite thing about Ashlyn Watkins, besides the fact that she dunks and is so exciting to watch offensively, is defensively. She helps solve a lot of problems because she can guard a post if you need to, even though she'd be a little bit undersized going against a 6'5" girl. But her leaping ability allows her to deny entry passes. Her shot blocking ability makes people alter their shots. Even if she's not blocking them, but she can also guard a guard. She's that athletic. Like if you need her to guard the, whoever's playing the 3 or the 4, like a Madison Booker of Texas, instead of guarding the post player, she can do that as well because she's athletic. So yeah, I look forward to having them both on the floor at the same time next year because they're both tremendous athletes and can do a lot of things. So it'll be fun to watch the two of them together next year.
Yeah, there's no question. And if Ashlyn was able to play here in the postseason, she's one of the players that could add to the flair of this team. That's been one of the neat things about Carolina basketball under Dawn, specifically in the last 8 years or so, is that there are players who do things in women's college basketball that you just generally don't see much of. It's just been rare, and that adds to when people watch this program from across the country, that excitement is able to add into this whole deal. But there is one player who's got flair who will be playing, and that's MiLaysia Fulwiley. We all know that. She obviously is going to get to play on her home floor here pretty soon, and then they'll go on from there. By the way, for anybody that hasn't looked at the latest Charlie Krim Bracketology, which came out this morning at 12:25, the Gamecocks would be the number 1 overall seed, of course, and that would make them the top seed in their own region. Yeah. But they would, according to this, they would get the winner of Southern and North Carolina A&T in the first round, and then in the second round they get the winner of 8th-seeded Creighton and 9th-seeded Georgia Tech. Fulwiley, we all know who she is and what she's capable of. I think she only maybe had 4 or 5 points in the championship game the other day. But it does seem like anytime it's like, man, we need some pop here. There she is. She kind of shows up, and then something magical happens. Everybody's on their feet, and the game's over.
Yeah, it's fun because when she checks in, it's like, all right, buckle up. But because you're not sure what's coming, but you're sure there's going to be something fun. I always say on the radio, she makes layups exciting because she doesn't just go up there and throw it off the window. There's some flair, and there's behind the back, reverse. Her passing, she's an elite level passer as well. And sometimes the neat thing is seeing her teammates adjust to that because you have to be ready at all times that she is going to make a pass to you, but you may not see it coming because it's going to be behind the back, around the neck or something. But she's an elite passer. But her ability to get to the rim, I think, is her strength. And I think something she's realized a little bit more. Her 3-point shots haven't been going down with regularity this year. I think she's below where she was last year, shooting from the perimeter. And I think late in the season, there was more of an emphasis for her to get to the rim just because she can finish, just, even around taller people because of her ability to, work it around the neck or whatever she does to get it up there. She's a good finisher and she's so quick. A lot of people who are fast aren't quick with the ball in their hands because it slows you down, right? When you have to dribble it, you can't run as fast as you would without the ball, but she can't. She still has that gear that is quicker than most who don't have a basketball in their hands. And to me, that's what makes her so fun because she can create, offense with her defense, a little poke the ball away, take it down the end of the court and, add some flair. But yeah, when she comes off the bench, it's like, okay, what's she going to do?
I know. And, like you said, when she comes off the bench, I was just having this conversation the other day with somebody before the Texas game. There isn't I don't care who it is, Texas, UCLA, Southern Cal. There isn't a team in the country that MiLaysia Fulwiley, Joyce Edwards, Tessa Johnson would be starting on.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And I just it's every year in this program now, every single year, Brad, as you know, as well as anybody out there, they run they run 5 or 6 more All-Americans / starters into the ball game. It is the most talented team in the country. But the thing that, and again, and we've had this conversation before, so you probably have it all the time. The thing that is just beyond bizarre with Dawn Staley is how they accept it.
Yeah.
They absorb the role that they're in. They want to be in that role, and they in this program, as opposed to saying, I'm a starter, I'm out of here. I just, and obviously that's one of the main reasons why they're so good every season too.
Yeah, and and I think a lot of it is they realize we can win here. We can go to Final Fours and get championships. Yeah, they can go somewhere else and maybe not win as much. But also, you look at how many players have gotten to the WNBA in the last 10 years from Coach Staley's team, that even if you're coming, someone who comes off the bench, you're still going to get to the league if you play here, or if you wait your turn, and come off the bench a year or two, and then maybe in year 2 or 3. I mean, look at Sanaya Fagan. She was playing behind All-Americans for 3 years. Now she's a starter as a senior. That was a player who could have started at a lot of places, but she stuck it out, and look where she is. And it's the same with the others. I think they've seen the success of others who had come off the bench and had great careers. I think the greatest example is, one of my favorite things was the 2015 season, which was South Carolina's first Final Four year. We had a good starting 5, and then at the first media timeout, Asia Wilson and Elena Coates would come off the bench, 2 future All-Americans. And I just always remember seeing the other team's shoulders just slump, because you get punched in the mouth with Tiffany Mitchell and the starting 5, and then all of a sudden there's a timeout, and here comes 6'5" and 6'5" off the bench, and you just see everybody's shoulders slump, like, really? And I would say those two had pretty good careers coming off the bench. Yeah,
Asia Wilson's the face of basketball right now. I mean, this is when she's in town. Do you ever get a chance to spend much time with her?
Just a brief conversations here or there, because as you might guess, if people know she's in town, she's getting pulled in a lot of directions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's neat. It's neat that you see so many players like that. Obviously, her family is here. This is where she's from. But it's neat when you see people like that come back and want to come to games and want to be a part of the want to come to practice. There's a lot of times where you go to practice and you don't even people don't even know that she's in town, but she's there at practice. Aaliyah Boston is the same way, and some of the other players that they come back, they go to practice either to watch or sometimes just to get a run in with the team. And then they come to the games, and I think they know too when they come here. They're still, it doesn't matter, when they graduated, they're still treated like goddesses when they come here by the fans because of what they did. It's similar to, South Carolina baseball fans,
Exactly.
when someone like, Scott Wingo or somebody like that, or Whit Merrifield, probably would never have to buy a meal here. They still get recognized, for what they did here, even if they didn't make it in the pros. They still get recognized for what they did here, and it's neat, that how beloved they are, for what they've done.
That's a great comp. There's no question about it. I had that on the tip of my tongue. Coach Tanner did the same thing in baseball, and certainly, well, here we go. We'll find out this weekend exactly what it's all going to look like. Do you agree with Charlie Krem that they'll probably be the number 1 overall seed?
Yeah, I think because of the momentum as of late, and you see who they played. I mean, South Carolina, has like the best strength of schedule. I think they've played and beaten more ranked teams than anybody in the country. They've played 33 games, and I think they've had at least 15 games against ranked teams, and then several games against teams that were in and out of the poll. So probably, more than half of your games were against, ranked level teams. And your only 3 losses were to teams ranked in the top 5,
Right.
that are currently in the top 5. And only one was, obviously the UConn game was kind of an aberration where they just didn't play well. It wasn't shocked that they lost, but they played terribly. But, the other games they were in, it was a 4-point loss at Texas. And, UCLA was very early in the season when, I don't think South Carolina had kind of figured itself out yet. And that was a tough matchup. But you lost to 3 top 5 teams. So I think there's no question, based on their strength of schedule, they've earned that right. The difference this year between other years is I don't think there's a huge difference between like number 1 in the nation and number 8 in the nation this year in terms of, how good each team is. I think 1 through 8, you won't be shocked if you went, yeah, they're going to be in the championship game, because the talent is more spread out than it has been in years past.
I mean, you just made me feel smart. I just said this the other day. I usually it's, sometimes it's one. Sometimes there's one. UConn was there for a while. South Carolina's been there. Tennessee, clear.
Yeah.
And then, I feel like it's gotten to kind of 2 or 3.
Yes.
Maybe 4. This, no question. I agree 100%. I mean, you look at the projected 2 seeds, UConn, NC State, Notre Dame. They got TCU as a projected 2 seed in the South Carolina region right now. Duke is a 3 seed, and heck, you could probably even include the Blue Devils in this conversation. Yeah, I'm with you, Brad. What would be for this sport with what okay, so coming off of last year, right? So Caitlin's gone to the WNBA, and obviously, South Carolina, it kind of where they are now, and everything else is going on, UCLA, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think would be the best Final Four for the sport?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn because you want to see the best teams, right? And as
Sure.
we talked about, there's not a lot of difference between 1 through 8 right now in terms of, could you see them winning it all? Yeah, it could happen. Whereas in years past, as you said, there's 3 teams that are really, playing for it all. But, now I think there's 8. Bigger picture, it would be neat if there was some kind of Cinderella run at some point where you had someone, that was lower than a 3 seed get to the Final Four. Because in the women's game, it's rare. It's usually 1s, 2s, and occasional 3, seeds that make to the Final Four. But you don't see a 5. You certainly don't see an 8 or 9 seed make it. It would be fun, from if someone's not a huge women's basketball follower. Because people like to, gravitate towards those Cinderella stories. I mean, look at, South Carolina men's basketball in 2017, right? That was a team nobody had going to the Final Four, and then all of a sudden, there's people jumping on our bandwagon because who are these guys? And it's great. And selfishly, I want South Carolina to be there. I like seeing the best teams, the best matchups. But in terms on a broader scale, I think it would be good for the game if I always forget lower, higher, whatever. If someone beyond a 3 seed made it to the women's Final Four, I think that would be, decent for the game because it creates storylines and creates interest, especially if you have a dynamic player. Juju Watkins, obviously at Southern Cal, is a tremendous player. They're one of the top teams in the country. But if she was doing what she was doing on a team that was ranked a little bit lower, then there'd be more interest because you got to see this kid. You have to see you have to see this Caitlin Clark that puts up shots from midcourt at regularity. If that's what draws more people to the game, then that's not a bad thing. As long as South Carolina's there, I don't care who else is there. But for the game, and I don't think that you're too far from that in terms of having some lower seeds from it based on how the game has progressed the last 7-8 years, where the talent is a little more spread out than it used to be.
All right, I'm going to add some extra hype into this conversation. So we just got the release a couple of days ago about the USC series, okay, the next couple of years, which is awesome. We don't need to wait that long. So here's what I'm thinking. If this holds, and Charlie Crim's usually pretty good, especially when it comes to the 1s and 2s. There's not going to be a lot of movement with this, I don't think. If it holds, Carolina as a 1 into the Final Four, UConn as a 2 out of Birmingham over Texas, and then the other side of the bracket, you'd get UCLA versus Southern Cal
for the 4th time
in the Final Four,
right? Yeah,
and then the hell with it. Give us USC versus USC in the national championship, and we can cancel the series after that. You get to call another national title game.
Yeah,
and you get to determine who the real USC is. But I'm looking. We talked to Debbie Antonelli a lot. Debbie's a dear friend, and her and I will off camera have some really deep conversations about continuing to add value to women's basketball. And the sport itself has done that in the last couple of years. When you think about some of the things, whether you liked it or not, what was going on down at LSU, it was kind of gibberish, but it helped the sport elevate its platform. Obviously, Caitlin, what Dawn has done in her personality, what Gino has done all these years, if you can still have some of that flavor in the Final Four, bring a rivalry into this thing, I just think you continue to build. We're going to get there one day. One day there's going to be a 6 or a 7 seed or an 8 seed that gets there. I don't think we're there now, like you said, though.
Right. But no, the storylines are great. And, that potential Final Four that you brought up, I think would be great. It would be great TV for a lot of reasons, because you'd have a lot of name brands. You'd have a lot of individual folks that would draw interest from fans that aren't traditional women's basketball fans, similar to what Caitlin Clark, brought. I think, the Gamecocks, not just because they've been one of the powerhouses the last decade, but because of people like MiLaysia Fulwiley that, people want to say, yeah, I want to check this kid out. The same with Juju Watkins at Southern Cal, who's a talent. I mean, she's an amazing talent. With the amassed talent at UCLA, and of course, a storyline if UConn made it was, is this Gino's last ride, because he's been around forever, and the crazy thing is, when I talk to people about UConn, they're like, oh yeah, they're not as good as they used to be. I'm like, no, they're still good. It's just, again, it's more spread out. They've won 11 national championships, but they haven't won one since 2016, which South Carolina's won 3 since then. But you know what? They've been to the Final Four, I think, 15 out of 16 years. They're still there. And last year, UConn was 1 possession away from playing Carolina in the championship game instead of Iowa. So, that scenario you brought up, I think, would be a tremendous Final Four, TV-wise, storyline-wise. I'd be happy if, obviously I hope South Carolina gets there. That being said, I'm not going to be totally shocked. Hopefully it's not South Carolina. I wouldn't be totally shocked if, there was a 1 seed that lost somewhere where you didn't think they would. Because it's not uncommon, obviously, to get 2s and 3s in the Final Four. But I think there's enough good teams out there where somebody could have a bad day and lose a little bit earlier than you thought. Unfortunately, I remember a year when South Carolina was a 1 seed coming off the first Final Four year in 2016. They lost in the Sweet 16 to a Syracuse team that really South Carolina was a lot better than, but Syracuse had a day. They had a great day, and they got on a great run, made it all the way to the championship game before losing to UConn. But I can tell you, Syracuse wasn't the second best team in the country that year, but they played great for a weekend and a half, and ended South Carolina's year that year when Carolina was a 1 seed. So hopefully that doesn't happen this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened to a high seed this year, because there's enough teams with, whether it's multiple players or that one talented player that could get on a roll and mess somebody up.
I could do this with you all day. It is exciting to watch this team play.